Tonight on The Wrap, the King of the North marches on Downing Street. After a tumultuous week at Westminster, Andy Burnham has confirmed that he wants another crack at Parliament, and a Labour MP is resigning so he can run. But he's already been warned by one former minister about looking entitled.
There's a sort of level of entitlement that I feel like I'll just have X, Y and Z seat.
The announcement came after Health Secretary Wes Streeting walked out of the government. In an excoriating resignation letter, he told the Prime Minister, where we need vision, we have a vacuum, and where we need direction, we have drift. Streeting's resignation is another blow to what's left of the Prime Minister's crumbling authority. But for now, Keir Starmer's still in Downing Street and insisting he'll stay there. We'll discuss all that with the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams, Times radio presenter Rod Diddle and our very own political editor Beth Rigby. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Good evening. They are calling it Wexit. The Health Secretary fired the gun on the Labour leadership contest when he walked out of the Cabinet. But the contenders haven't shot out of the blocks yet. First, the favourite to be the next Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has to win a by-election that already has Reform UK and Nigel Farage licking their lips. Zoe, Rod and Beth, your thoughts. Let's come to you first of all, Zoe.
Well, look, Reform is going to fight that seat with everything they've got, and you'd expect them to. But the really dangerous thing will be if the Greens also fight it with everything they've got, because it's not something you just waltz into, a by-election seat. You never know which way people are going to go.
Yeah, there's that thought, isn't there, from Jess Phillips, that there's this sense of entitlement that because it's there for the offering, Andy Burnham will win the seat.
Yeah, I'm not at all sure that he will. And I think the Greens are a problem. I think also the fact that the brutal fact about this whole process, which is that Labour has lost the votes of the industrial working class, that which remains of it. And it's still enough people to give them a majority, and without them they can't get a majority. They can't just nibble away at Green votes in the South and Lib Dem votes in the South. They need the working class vote, which is what they were set up to protect. And they've lost that.
Beth, take us through your day as it unfolded. Early start. I do want to know. She's still shaking.
Well, it started at 6 a.m. with Angela Rayner announcing that she had been cleared of wrongdoing on her HMRC investigation over whether she had underpaid tax. She did underpay tax, and she did pay the stamp duty due on that South Coast home, but she was exonerated of deliberate wrongdoing. So that kind of cleared the way for potentially Angela Rayner to enter the fray of a leadership race. And then 1 p.m, Wes Streeting announced his resignation. At 5 p.m, Andy Burnham and Josh Simons, the MP that is stepping down from that seat, they announced he was standing down. Andy Burnham said he was standing. And the thing about Andy Burnham's statement wasn't just, I want to return to Westminster and be a team player, which was how he spun it when he was trying to stand in the Gorton and Denton by-election. This time it was like, I'm coming back to try to be Prime Minister. So it's been a day of high drama. But I think, Rod, it's very interesting what you just said, and you, Zoe, about the Greens, because there's the question about the progressive vote splitting. And that was actually a problem in those seats around Greater Manchester, the council seats, that the votes split and Reform came through the middle. But this is why a lot of MPs have just, alighted on Andy Burnham as the saviour, because they think that he can speak both to the industrial base of those post-industrial places in the north, west, the north-east, the Welsh coast as well, that Labour have lost, but also that he has that modernity about him, that he's not a creature of Westminster, he's not part of the elite, but he can also speak and inspire young people. So I think a lot of Labour MPs are sort of pinning their hopes on Andy Burnham as this character that can bring these wings of Labour together. But he is quite unproven, really.
Yes, I voted for him in 2015 as to be leader of the Labour Party.
I know, but he was a completely different creature in 2015.
And he was a completely different creature then, you're quite right. Yeah, absolutely.
While Beth,
trying to call order.
While Beth's trying to calm her nerves after this extraordinary day, should we take a look at her report and this really quite extraordinary day in British politics?
The battle for number 10, won by Starmer in 2024, but it's now gearing up again. The race not officially underway, but rival Wes Streeton and Andy Burnham firing the starting gun on a Prime Minister determined to soldier on. After days of tension, Wes Streeton finally resigned from Starmer's government, writing he had lost confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership and it would be dishonourable and unprincipled to remain as Health Secretary as he heavily criticised his former boss. Where we need vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. Streeton stopped short on pulling the trigger on a leadership challenge right now, but he told Keir Starmer he would not be the one to lead Labour into the next general election. The Prime Minister steadfast, signalling he'd plough on, saying in a letter to Wes Streeton that Labour had made a promise to turn the page on the chaos that was roundly rejected by the British people at the last general election. But Starmer's landslide win now long past and his success long forgotten. Former Safeguarding Minister and Wes Streeton ally Jess Phillips for the first time talked about her decision to resign on Tuesday. You said Starmer's a good man, but you also, and you said that in your letter, but you also said he doesn't have the drive, the fight. You said have a row, push back, make arguments, bring people along. Standing up and being counted can't always be workshopped. Politics is as much about feelings as policy, especially at the moment. What do you think he's just too robotic? He can't connect. He doesn't bring passion. What were you getting at there?
What I think that he lacks and his operation lacks is the drive to get anything done with the gusto that is needed in a time like it's like we run an analog government in a digital world.
What do you think of Andy?
There's a sort of level of entitlement that I feel like I'll just have X, Y, and Z seat. I don't know, I'm really rooted in the place where I represent, maybe. And so I always think that it doesn't look great playing a sort of Game of Thrones.
The throne soon materialising in the seat of Makerfield.
As your MP, I will put Makerfield at the heart of a UK government led by Keir Starmer.
With former Minister Josh Simons announcing early evening he was stepping down as the MP to let Andy Burnham run for Parliament. But the path to Westminster not clear-cut. It's understood the PM won't block Burnham's attempt to stand, but Reform just won big in the local elections in this part of the North West. As the news of Simons standing down broke, Cabinet loyalist Pat McFadden came out to bat for his boss. The Prime Minister has lost the support of nearly a quarter of the Parliamentary Labour Party. He's lost a Cabinet Minister. There's been 4 ministerial resignations. Whether for all the goodwill in the world and the best intentions he wants to continue as Prime Minister, can you hand on heart say that he can command the confidence of the Labour Party anymore? I mean, the writing's on the wall, isn't it?
It's been a dramatic week, but I think he can continue. He wants to continue, and he wants to do the job he was elected to do.
Is he going to stand at the next election as Prime Minister for Labour?
He's got every right to do that. He was elected on a 5-year mandate. It's 3 years away, but I believe he wants to continue.
Starmer may want to carry on, but he's fast running out of road. Too weak to block Burnham's run for Parliament. The Prime Minister's fate is now beyond his control. 2 leadership rivals have shown their hand, and Keir Starmer is now in the midst of a protracted and painful leadership crisis that could drag on for months. There are plenty of MPs who don't want the civil war Labour's now in, or their leader embroiled in the chaos he promised to end. This a government that promised change, now paralysed. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
So, Beth, we've heard potentially from the challengers, as would be. Who's speaking up for the Prime Minister?
Well, Pat McFadden. Poor Pat McFadden was sort of dispatched on the round, and he literally came on to do the round as the news broke, so he was really kind of rifting in the moment. Look, to be fair to the Prime Minister, we've heard a lot of noise today from those that would want to challenge him, but actually he does have over 100 MPs that have publicly come out to support him. He has about 8 or 9 cabinet ministers on my last count that are publicly taken to the airways to support him. So this is not a sort of asymmetrical battle. It is a running battle between two parts of the party and divisions. There are divisions in his cabinet. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has told him to set out a timetable. Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, has privately told him this. Wes Streeting now resigning. But he is helped by the fact that the party is split. The problem he's got is, I would argue, that if you lose the confidence of 90 of your backbenchers, which is nearly a quarter of the parliamentary party, you've got 4 resignations, a cabinet resignation, you just can't command the confidence of your party into the long term. And so I think that's where, for Starmer, as much as he wishes it wasn't the case and he would like to carry on, I think the momentum is moving against him, and I think that will just build and build and build. And I think fundamentally what he actually needs to happen is for Labour to improve in the polls, for the economic outlook to improve, so people feel a bit better off. So if that change message that he promised in 2024 has some tangible basis in everyone's reality, but he's now hamstrung because the chaos in the party and the paralysis, therefore, in his government, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that he's not the right leader. So it's a really, really, I think it's going to be a very turbulent time now, while we wait to see if Burnham can come back and then whether a leadership race will be triggered, which I think it will. The test for Burnham, though, is can he win the seat? Reform won all of the 8 council seats in that part of the world in the local elections. If he can win it, then he comes back to Westminster as, I am the guy that can save Labour from a reform government, which is what a lot of MPs are worried about. They said to me, as Jess Phillips in that interview said, we're handing reform, we're handing the government, we're handing the country to reform if we don't change Starmer. And that is quite a pervasive view now across many MPs, particularly those in the Red Wall.
Should we take a look at the approval ratings of politicians now, so we can sort of gauge where we're at with that, and quite clearly +4 for Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer right at the bottom at -46. Rod, do you think that if there is a challenge, Sir Keir Starmer could survive? Might he be one of the names put into the hat? So, you know, for instance, he's running against Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting.
I certainly think he could survive. Beth was talking about, you know, the weight of opinion against him within the Labour Party. You think back to '95 and the trouble that John Major had. It was pretty much the same, roughly about the same proportion who were opposed to John Major. And Major just ignored it.
Yeah, he survived.
And survived and walked all the way through it. I think there's a more existential problem now, and it's also exacerbated by social media, by 24-hour news, by this being reported every single day rather than it was back 30 years ago. The real problem, and it's a problem which Burnham will face, is that Labour has lost the votes of the people it was set up to support. Yeah. That is crucial, and they cannot win without that. They can, you know, nibble away at the Green vote in the south and the Lib Dem and indeed the Conservative vote in the south, but they cannot hope to win a majority based on that small tranche of the population. You need the working class on board, and to my mind, Shabana Mahmood would have been the best person to do that, but there's no hope whatsoever in a million years of Shabana getting anywhere near it. No. A bit of left-wing populism. You know, I saw that from John McDonnell. When I was out on the stump during the 2017 and 2019 elections, there was nothing that John McDonnell said which lots of the Red Wall voters would disagree with. Their objections were to the further fields of lifestyle socialism which Corbyn promoted. It wasn't really for the economic plans, you know.
So, do you believe that the King of the North is the candidate to appeal to that Red Wall?
I'm surely allowed to disagree with some of that first. You know, it's not wrong to say Labour's lost the support of the working classes, but what is wrong is to frame the working classes as this homogenous, unchanged thing that's been homogenous and unchanged since the start of the last century.
No, it has changed.
It's changed enormously, but it also, because of like the precariousness, especially in the under 35s, it's drawn in a lot of people that you probably would call middle class because they drink oat milk, but actually are living conditions in which a payslip to payslip and will consider themselves working class. So yes, Labour has to be on the side of the working class, but we need to reconfigure what we think the working class looks like. Anyway, Andy
you can have the oatmeal drinkers.
So,
I don't mind that. You know,
OK, thank you. So Andy Burnham, there's this thing. The Labour leader kind of faints left when they get in front of the membership because that's the only way they'll get past the membership, and that is definitely what Wes Streeting's plan was. And he made the weird move of saying that to The Guardian in an interview 3 years ago. It's like the way to get the members is to go left, and now we see him handing in this resignation letter, which makes him sound very left-wing, which I haven't heard him sound ever. Andy Burnham, I do think, is different. You know, he was a Blairite, he was associated with that centre of the party, but he was radicalised by the Hillsborough inquiry, by the blood scandal. He was radicalised by COVID and the kind of facelessness of the Westminster government. And he was radicalised by having to create this kind of working economic success story in Manchester, which he is now calling Manchesterism. Is it going to catch on? I don't know. But I do think he tells a more convincing tale of a left-wing politician than actually any of the others do, apart from Ange.
Don't disagree with any of that.
No, and I think what's very interesting about all of this, though, is we've talked a lot about the personalities, but what about the policies and the politics of this? And on the policies, Burnham really spooked the bond markets at the beginning of the Labour Party conference last autumn when he said that the government shouldn't be in the hock of the bond markets. Now, this was used by opponents of Burnham. They jumped on it. You can't trust him with the economy. But the fact is, the UK carries huge amounts of debt. Much of it is indexed to the bond markets. And if the bond markets get nervous about whoever is in power and they worry about fiscal stability and they worry about tax rises, etc., it could be very damaging to the economy. And it's really interesting to see, I think, as this leadership race, because I think it will happen, plays out, how do these different candidates handle what the party will want to hear to become elected? Because do they make more and more promises about spending and investment that they then can't deliver because of the constraints of an economy that is hugely indebted at a time where interest rates could be going up, inflation could be going up, we could get fuel problems because of the war in Iran. So it's really... I don't know how that's going to play out, but also if they start messing too much with the manifesto, then they don't have a mandate, because you can't become the next Labour leader and then try and change the manifesto without your political opponents really going in that you don't have any legitimacy, which is exactly what happened to Liz Truss, then to Rishi Sunak.
Sure. But as we know, campaigning very different to governing. There's a wide chasm between the two. And we know that Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has engineered a by-election so he can get back to Westminster. But Nigel Farage is already licking his lips. Sam Coates explains why.
This new data shows why Andy Burnham could struggle to return to Westminster. Let me show you why. This map of last week's local election results shows Reform UK winning in every single of the wards in the Makerfield constituency. It is a Labour seat. Here are the results from the last general election, but the majority was only 5,399 votes. Reform already saying that they're going to win it, but if Andy Burnham takes it, he'll have proved his credentials as somebody who can take on Nigel Farage. But there's another problem for Labour. Have a look at this. Greater Manchester, from Tameside to Bury to Wigan, a Labour area for generations, but last Thursday it went Reform blue. These are the winning wards all across the 10 councils. But just how bad was it? We've done the calculations. And here they are. This is the percentage share of the vote in lots of wards in last Thursday's local election. Reform, 30% out in top. Labour on 24, Greens third on 20%, Tories on 10, Lib Dems on 9. But how does that compare to 2022 when a lot of the wards were last contested? Well, look at this. Labour down 28 percentage points. Reform up even more than that, up 30 percentage points, with the Greens up 12 as well. Tories down a bit, Lib Dems down a bit. There are still some strongholds for Labour. This is a map of constituencies with the areas darkest red showing where the Labour vote in last week's local elections was up to 50%. You can see the cluster around Manchester city centre, but it's still a very challenging picture for Labour if Andy Burnham heads to Westminster.
Yeah, it's not a shoe-in by any means, is it, Beth Makerfield?
No, it's not. And but this is why this is a fascinating battle now, because Reform will say they'll pull out all the stops and they will throw everything at winning that seat. And then really it does become a test of Andy Burnham's personal brand and personal pulling power with voters that he has served as Greater Manchester Mayor. And I think if he fights that by-election and beats Reform, he can come back to Westminster and say, you know, you guys are really worried about taking on Nigel Farage, and your fear is that Keir Starmer does not have that personality, politics and communication style that's necessary either for Polanski on the left or Farage on the right. I mean, then for many Labour MPs, it becomes quite irresistible, doesn't it? Because he comes with, I'm an outsider, I'm not of Westminster, I live in a different part of the country. There's been a lot of talk, and Zoe, you would have picked this up, with some Labour MPs saying we cannot have another London Labour leader. Like, we have to move beyond, like, I don't know, 2 boroughs in North London. So if he can come back to Westminster and have beaten Reform, then he has a really strong calling card. Because actually, the other thing people have said to me about Burnham is what they like about him is they view him as a clean skin. He's not been part of the Starmer administration that voters clearly feel hugely let down. The reason Labour are in this difficulty is Starmer was elected on a programme for change. There was a series of unforced errors. The public feel let down. They haven't delivered the change message. Now, it could be, they would argue, it takes longer in a cycle, that he needs more time, but then they've got so smashed up in these elections. The election results were horrendous, and all these MPs they're panicking because they're like, if we carry on like this, we will lose our seats, we'll lose the next general election. And that is on Starmer.
And the fear of Nigel Farage, as you said, they're saying that Reform is going to throw really everything at it. Let's just read a quote from Nigel Farage. He said, we look forward to the contest and we will absolutely throw everything at it.
Yes, but they won't win. They won't win. The lesson of every by-election, if this was a general election, I think Reform possibly could win in Makersfield. But in a by-election, the result from Caerphilly, the result from Gorton and Denton, the results more recently in little by-elections up and down the northeast where I live, is very clear that there are far, far, far more people in this country who really dislike Nigel Farage than there are who really like him. And that's why Plaid Cymru won in Caerphilly. It's why that Plummer won in Manchester.
Hannah Spencer.
Yes, I forgot her name.
Hannah Spencer.
She's so lovely. But that is why they won, because when faced with the possibility of a Reform MP or a member of the Welsh Parliament, whatever you call it, I forget which it is. Yes, that's right. Sorry. They will go for anyone but. General election, that doesn't work quite so well. But in a by-election, I think it's quite straightforward.
I kind of agree. The negative partisanship thing is much stronger now than it's ever been. People hate who they hate much more than they love who they love. And B, it's quite easy to coalesce around the right candidate when you're in a by-election because you haven't got all the noise going on elsewhere. So you haven't got loads of polls. You haven't got Nick Robinson. You haven't got any of that. Actually, you do have Nick Robinson. But anyway.
Always have Nick Robinson.
Always, in our hearts. Anyway, you don't have that noise which, like, flip you. All you have to do is go on your kind of neighbours and the posters you see. So it's quite easy to know who's winning. I mean, but I do worry about the Greens compromising it, and that actually makes me worry for the progressive side generally, because the Greens' best bet is a Labour leader who is in favour of cooperation, in favour of constitutional change, in favour of PR.
I think you'll also see the Greens.
That.
I also think you'll see the Green vote decreasing reasonably rapidly over the next few months.
I actually interviewed Zach Polanski up near Gorton Denton during the local election campaign. He said to me he thought that Starmer would be gone relatively soon.
What,
and he
as long
said,
ago as that?
I mean, he said, I mean, this was 3 or 4 weeks ago. He said they'll do terribly in the local elections and he will get kicked out. But he said he would work with Burnham.
OK.
He liked Burnham and he liked Rayner. I mean, I think what's interesting about this this argument that you, Rod, are making and you, Zoe, are making as well, what is interesting is when you look at polling, on the right, Conservative and Reform voters really don't like any sense of tie-up. So when Reform say we're not doing a deal with the Conservatives, it's actually because Reform voters are less likely to vote for them because the whole point is they don't want the Conservatives. On the left, Progressives, they are much more open-minded to teaming up, compromising, switching votes, tactical voting in order to stop the right, to stop Reform. And I think it's going to be really interesting in this by-election. Do the Greens come in and really try and fight it, or do they ease off a bit? Because in the Gorton and Denton by-election, they sort of said, well, if Andy Burnham had run, we might not have gone for it because, I don't know, we probably wouldn't have won it or whatever. And that's interesting,
But then the fight in Gorton and Denton was unbelievably ugly, and there were Labour activists putting up, driving around in a van saying Hannah Spencer wants to sell drugs to your children. So it's like there's a lot of bad blood now.
Got very, very nasty.
Which I would hope they're going to be able to move past.
We can discuss
Labour can be very, very dirty.
They really can.
I mean, all parties can be very dirty in elections.
But particularly against the two, particularly against the two Arab East parties, you know, the Greens and Reform.
We're going to discuss much more.
It's hard to manage this, isn't it?
Very hard to manage.
You're good at it.
Right, silence. We're going to take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armour on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
You are watching The Wrap. Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. The Financial Times suggests Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham's intention to return to Westminster means Sir Keir Starmer's battle to keep his job is underway now. The Eye also leads on the Prime Minister's fight to retain control of the Labour Party. Burn to run is the Sun's headline as the Prime Minister reveals he won't block Burnham from standing to be an MP. The Star also leads on Andy Burnham's plans to try and re-enter Westminster. The Telegraph suggests the Manchester Mayor could replace Starmer within weeks. But The Guardian points out that Mr Burnham will need to win the Makerfield by-election first. Labour's Great Pretenders is the headline in the Mail, which says Starmer's government has been frozen in the headlights. Remarking on what could become a Labour leadership contest, the Mirror says, and so it begins. Where we need vision, we have a vacuum, is the headline in The Express, as Wes Streeting resigns as Health Secretary. The Times also leads on the mounting pressure on the Prime Minister to set out a timetable for his departure. The Metro portrays the possible contenders as characters from the Jilly Cooper TV series Rivals. Giggling there.
Sorry.
Yeah, minus the...
Yes.
And the, yes, those scenes. Let's start with the Telegraph, their front page. Actually, it's on all of the front pages, and Andy Burnham launching his bid for number 10. Or is he? Yeah. He might just want to come back as an MP and be part of Sir Keir Starmer's government.
Me and Beth just had a cow because it looks like, and the Telegraph have made this look like Andy Burnham has given them his first interview, and we're like, what the living hell is going on? But that is not what's happened. This is just the Telegraph giving a very straightforward account of Andy Burnham's next move. So, of course, we all remember he was blocked from standing in Gorton and Denton by the NEC. A lot of people said that was a really bad call. There was an argument at that time that Starmer didn't really have a choice. If he hadn't blocked him, it would have been like inviting chaos onto his doorstep. Now, again, he still had a choice. The NEC could have blocked Burnham again, but once the seat was open, it became obvious that either Keir didn't have the strength to impose it, the NEC didn't have the inclination to do it, or some combination of those things. Those things happened in fairly short order. As soon as Josh Simons had resigned, then the NEC said Burnham could run. And after that, well, we're still in this huge thing. Does Burnham win that seat? And does Labour lose the Manchester mayoralty, which I know doesn't sound very important, but actually is quite important. But the thing is, I initially thought, well, this is really, really dicey because Reform's numbers are brilliant in Makerfield. But it's not a bad play if your intention really is to either save the country from Reform or go down trying. That's sort of what he's saying. If I can't beat Reform in a by-election, I can't beat Reform in a general election, and I don't want to bring that on you.
Well,
so
if he can't beat Reform, no one can.
No, that's not true.
Well, I think it is, because, I think he will beat Reform.
You're just betraying a lack of imagination.
Well, I might, I suppose, win it. But
that wasn't my
you want the imagination. No, I think he will win it for the reasons I've outlined before, which is that there is an enormous animus against Nigel Farage. And that's one of the things which Reform has to deal with. It has to try to lift its percentage up from where it is now, about 28%, 29%, up to 35, 36%. It has to win over the people who are too fastidious to vote Reform. And there's quite a lot of those people, and that hasn't been done yet. I think if this by-election were in the northeast of England, if it were in Hartlepool or Sunderland or Middlesbrough, I think he would find it very difficult to win. The vote for reform on the East Coast is far, far harder and more solidified and resolute than it is in the Northwest. But I think in the Northwest he is... I think I would put him 80% odds on to win.
Really?
And he has got the legacy of what he's achieved in Greater Manchester, and this, tag of Manchesterism that he's going to bring to central government.
So what he's got, which I think is chimeric, is this Manchesterism. I think Manchesterism is a good thing. I think he's done great things in Manchester, but it's the fastest growing bit of the country, and that he's trying to accrue to himself the credit for that. I don't think politicians create growth, and I think if you come into power in any situation saying I can bring you growth, it's like dancing to a rain god. It's just you are hostage to fortune.
But isn't that exactly what they say? They will create growth.
But they all
that's
do.
What people vote them in on.
They all say that. When did anybody ever come into power saying I'm going to not create growth? They just don't do it. But governments don't create growth.
Well, they can.
But if they can, then why don't they? Actually, growth is a huge number of things all coming together at the same time, of which some governments are better at being in the middle of than others. But
Conservative governments tend to create more growth than Labour governments.
No, that's actually not
Despite
true,
them,
Rod.
if you look at the statistics, you will find that
I'm talking
economic growth has been bigger under Conservatives than it has been under Labour. And I speak as someone who is not a Conservative.
No, that's actually not true. I mean, I'm not going to bore you by getting my phone out and showing you the relative growth patterns of different governments, but it's not true to say. The fact is there have been more Conservative governments than there are Labour governments, so obviously there have been more periods of growth, but they can't just conjure it. Anyway, that's not the point. The thing is about what he's bringing with Manchesterism is a history of sticking it to central government. He was incredibly challenging to Boris Johnson under COVID. A history of staying out of Westminster when it's getting its hands dirty. He hasn't been in the Labour Party. He's been none of it in travails. He didn't get his hands dirty at any point. And a history of running a city according to the principles that he says he believes in, which is a huge thing. It's a huge thing.
Without, in fairness, having to raise very much in the way of money. I mean, it's not quite the same as being a government, is it?
I actually don't know how to run either a city or a country.
The other problem I think he has, but it's not one for now, it's one for probably 2 years down the road, which is that he's been freed from scrutiny for quite some time in a national sense. Obviously, he's been scrutinised in Manchester, and he's popular in Manchester, no doubt about that. But don't bet against the papers going hell for leather. And there'll be stuff. Perhaps it'll be Asian gangs, which they will bring up. That's already been mentioned to me a couple of times today by people who say, "Oh, wait till you hear about the."
You don't think he's been in an Asian gang?
I don't think he's actually been in an Asian gang.
I don't think that's what Rod was suggesting. But for the moment, at least, the headlines are very positive, aren't they? We look at The Sun, Burn to run, Burnham in fight for number 10, bruised PM won't block bid. The Guardian, your paper, Zoe Burnham bids to topple Starmer, but he must win by-election first.
We're almost ungovernable in a way, and it's a terrible thing which should unite those of us on the left and those of us on the right, that it is very difficult for any government to come in and produce a platform, produce a series of policies which they're going to try to see through without the public hating them within 3 months. And this has happened in every single government we've had. Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, all the way back to Tony Blair. Something fundamental has changed in the way we view politics. We're far more dissatisfied with what they do, and that dissatisfaction sort of beds itself in very, very early on, and that's a problem.
But you say that like it's just some peculiarity, like we're all on our period or something. That's not what's going on. The point is, living standards have been either flat or declining since 2008, and people feel like every single government comes in saying things are going to get better, and they never do get better.
Well, that's because we're a country in decline.
No, well, it's a perfectly legitimate thing to be angry about, and to say that we're ungovernable as a result, I don't think is is
No,
right.
but we become ungovernable. We become ungovernable when it becomes almost impossible for anyone who is the Prime Minister, no matter what policies they're putting forward, and it would be the same if it was Nigel Farage, it would be the same if it was Polanski, that immediately the spotlight is turned on them. There becomes a division within the country. There is hatred on one side. At that one side, because it's one party, is always bigger than the number who support him. And Starmer has suffered from that. I'm not saying that he was a great Prime Minister. I think he was inept. But nonetheless, that process will happen to whoever becomes Prime Minister.
Well, let's take a look at one of the contenders who may want to be Prime Minister. We don't know yet. But Wes Streeting didn't just walk away from the government today. He walked away from the NHS. Here's our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi.
None of us know what comes next. It's not a fair position for families at all.
It could have been one of his major achievements as the Health Secretary, but instead, Wes Streeting leaves his post just weeks ahead of a key review into the country's maternity scandals. Bereaved families feel badly let down.
It takes so much out of each of us, you know, the emotional toll of having to really go into the darkest time of our lives, losing our children and sharing that with a stranger. It's such a big ask, and we've done it. We don't want to have to do it again. We don't want to be in this position of having to build that relationship all over again with someone new from scratch. But I think that is the position we're in.
I think sunlight is the best disinfectant, and it's really clear to me that the NHS is broken.
Wes Streeting wanted to be seen as an NHS reformer, the Health Secretary, who would take a wrecking ball to the parts of the NHS that were failing and build them back more efficient and more productive. Instead, he leaves without seeing that ambition realised.
We've got a lot to change in terms of the culture of the NHS, but at least you know that your persistence is changing that culture.
Streeting has positioned himself as a champion of patient safety, listening to harmed families and backing their individual cases, including the Ahmed family, who lost their 5-year-old child, Yusuf, after the NHS failed in his care.
He's always said, OK, if we made mistakes, we want to make changes. We want these implemented. We want to see changes. We do not want any other family to be sat with us going through the same concerns. So it's not just going through one ear and out of the other ear. He has physically been involved in these changes.
This is already a time of significant upheaval in the health service. NHS England is being abolished and thousands of staff are currently facing redundancy. I became Sky's health correspondent in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic was declared. And in my time, there have been 7 health secretaries. It's a department that desperately needs stability, not uncertainty.
There is a big merger going on between those two organisations, which was being overseen by Wes Streeting. Very complicated, bringing thousands of people together. In those organisations today, there will be a sense of where are we going now? Who is in charge of which team? Where does power lie? And decision-making will have completely ground to a halt as a result.
Even his critics would have to accept that Streeting has energy and was fully invested in his brief. But the question is, will people feel let down now he's put his personal ambitions ahead of the promises he made to them about finally fixing a broken NHS and delivering justice for patients and affected families? Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, Ashish said in his report there that there'd been 7 health secretaries since 2019 when he became Sky's health correspondent. The appointment of James Murray in the last hour or so means that's now 8. And when we look at the headline of the Mirror, and so it begins, as the economy starts growing and the NHS cuts waiting lists for the first time in years, Streeting, Burnham and Rayner line up to challenge the PM. Ashish made mention of the fact that at a critical time for the NHS, Wes Streeting was deserting it for personal gain.
I think, to be completely fair, well, of all those 8 health secretaries, 6 of them were under the Conservative government. So, you know, it has been a period of relative stability in terms of the health service, and maybe that has told in terms of bringing down waiting lists. Maybe just somebody having their hands on it for longer makes it more successful. I don't know if he's deserting it in its time of need. I think he's he's quite strategic in what he does with the health service. Not everybody in it feels that he's been that emollient and created good relations between, you know, doctors and nurses and the government. Irrespective of any of that, whether he'd resigned or not, the government would be in chaos and nobody would be talking about the NHS. So I wouldn't throw that at Wes Streeting, but I would throw. There's a lot else I would throw at him.
Yeah, it's a bit unfair. I mean, I think he was quite brave to have gone. And brave to have gone because I don't think he stands a chance of winning the election.
Well, he can't get into the election, right? He hasn't got the numbers.
Indeed. I think that's absolutely right.
So how is that brave?
Well, because I think he has seen and saw for a long time that the Labour Party needed new leadership, that it was headed for an appalling electoral disaster under Sir Keir Starmer, and that he was the only one who had the guts to come up and say, well, look, I will give you my job and I will stand. And I think that's kind of to his credit. Would I vote for him as a leader of the Labour Party? I'm not sure I would. But still, I think you have to give him credit for that. I think his future is pretty limited now, isn't it? You know,
but on the broader point of 8 health secretaries in that period of time that we're talking about.
Hang on. You're absolutely right that there have been. And that's a bad way to govern a country. And as Zoe rightly said, the majority of them, all but one indeed, all but 2 now, came from the Conservative Party. But that is true across every single department. And it's one of the huge problems we have as a nation, that there is no long-termism in anything we do these days. You know, we should have... And this is partly Ed Miliband's fault. We should have nuclear power stations on the coast of our modular nuclear... These were planned 20 years ago.
But following that logic, Rod, then should we leave Sir Keir Starmer in situ then? Because there's too much change and there's not enough stability.
There is an argument for that, but I would argue more strongly that more generally we need to have politicians in situ, particularly those who are handling very difficult, very, very complex briefs, such as health, such as Treasury, and particularly defence, there for a long while in order to get a degree of continuity which might stretch across parliaments rather than just for the terribly short time of 4 or 5 years, however long it might be.
OK, Rod and Zoe, we're going to take a break. Coming up, we'll hear more from the contenders for the top job. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
You are watching The Wrap. Andy Burnham has made 2 previous bids to be Labour leader. We've dug this out of the archive.
I have a very clear vision of how I want to rebuild Labour for new times.
Labour wins when it speaks for everyone and for the whole country, for Middle England, but also for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland too. And it needs a leader whose voice can carry into all the nations and regions of the UK, be heard in every home, someone who people can relate to, who understands their lives. I am that person.
And here's Angela Rayner. I won't say what you said. Here's Angela Rayner denying that she has ambitions to lead.
I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country, and I've got a lot in my entry to prove that I can do the job that I'm doing and deliver on the milestones for the people of this country. That's what I'm interested in, Trevor.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of.
Say the word never.
Never.
And spot spot who's on the end when an array of MPs were once asked who'd be Prime Minister in 10 years' time.
Any old bloody Labour woman I'll take.
Undoubtedly Kemi Badenoch.
Gavin Williamson.
Amber Morris.
Rees-Mogg. How about that?
I think it'd probably be me.
Whoa.
Did you think he was going to say that?
I did, actually, yes.
I did as well,
I knew he was thinking it, but, it's painful.
It's no surprise, then, that he's resigned and has sort of shot the firing gun, although he hasn't put his hat in the ring, technically.
I don't want to do too much of a kind of beltway thing, but everybody thought that Wes was planning his leadership even before Labour won the election. All the talk was that Keir was like the guy who would get them past the members, and then once they'd got past the members, Wes would come in. It was a given that he had ambitions, and it was a given that that whole Labour right clique that shored up Keir were also very much in support of Wes, and Wes was their next king. You know, the Coronation Streeting joke has been made a long time before this crisis.
But Wes himself seemingly not wanting a coronation because in his resignation letter he opened up the field for Andy Burnham.
Well, exactly. He's not going to get a coronation. Which is why I said earlier, I thought it was reasonably brave of him to do that. I mean, I would take Zoe's probable response that he has such an unshakable belief in his own abilities that he probably thought he could be the next leader of the Labour Party. You may well be right about that. But it was still a comparatively brave thing to do, given the fact that Miliband and Rayner were there, and Rayner's just been exonerated for, so she says, from the the allegations that she deliberately underpaid.
No, she has been exonerated.
She has been exonerated.
Well, she's been cleared. Yes, she hasn't been.
That's the same thing.
Well, I use exonerated.
What, do you need like holy water?
Yeah, holy water. You need holy water. Yes, definitely. So I think it's almost impossible for either of them to become the next leader now that Burnham has a seat to go for, and that's probably the best result for the Labour Party. I would have thought if I was Kemi or Nigel Farage, I'd be sitting there thinking, is there anything we can do to stop Burnham? No, there probably isn't.
So the campaign from the opposition parties are to stop Burnham, you think? We'll discuss much more in the coming hour. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Tonight on The Wrap, the King of the North marches on Downing Street. After a tumultuous week at Westminster, Andy Burnham has confirmed that he wants another crack at Parliament, and a Labour MP is resigning so he can run. But he's already been warned by one former minister about looking entitled.
There's a sort of level of entitlement that I feel like I'll just have X, Y and Z seat.
The announcement came after Health Secretary Wes Streeting walked out of the government. In an excoriating resignation letter, he told the Prime Minister, "Where we need vision, we have a vacuum. And where we need direction, we have drift." Streeting's resignation is another blow to what's left of the Prime Minister's crumbling authority. But for now, Keir Starmer's still in Downing Street and insisting he'll stay there. We'll discuss all the chat with the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the Times radio presenter Rod Liddell, and John Craig is also in the studio with us. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Good evening. They are calling it Wexit. The Health Secretary fired the gun on a Labour leadership contest when he walked out of the cabinet. But the contenders haven't shot out of the blocks yet. First, the favourite to be the next Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has to win a by-election that already has Reform UK and Nigel Farage licking their lips. Zoe and Rod, your thoughts? Let's come to you first of all, Rod.
I think it's a very difficult by-election for Reform to do well in, but if I was them, what I would do is say, well, here's a man who doesn't really care about the area where he's fighting for a seat, because he gave up the mayor of Manchester in order to fulfil his personal ambitions. That's the first thing I would do. Yeah, harsh, but that will be levelled at him.
Zoe?
I think it's a smart move. No, I think it's a brave move, because the truth is, if he can't win that by-election, then he can't fulfil what he's offering, which is that he's the leader who can beat Reform. So I think he's sort of going to do or die.
John?
To be fair to Andy Burnham, and I'm going to defend him against what Rod's just said, the seat is next door to his old seat of Lee. It's where he lives, and I must admit, it took me by surprise. There must be fury in Downing Street at what Josh Simons has done, because they thought he was one of them. One of theirs, rather, because, of course, he was from this outfit, the... what's it called? Labour Together. Yeah. And, of course, he had to quit as a minister when they were smearing Sunday Times journalists. So, yeah, it's a gamble for Burnham. But, well, if you don't gamble, you've got to be bold. People like Blair always say you've got to be bold in politics.
I was just saying that that's what I think Reform would do. That would seem to be the obvious way to attack. And then you bring in all the other stuff which Burnham is going to find difficult to deal with, such as immigration and Islamism and all the kind of stuff which Reform has made a lot out of in the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, we'll discuss a lot more on that in a second. But first, our political editor, Beth Rigby, has been in the thick of another extraordinary day in British politics.
The battle for number 10, won by Starmer in 2024, but it's now gearing up again. The race not officially underway, but rival Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham firing the starting gun on a Prime Minister determined to soldier on. After days of tension, Wes Streeting finally resigned from Starmer's government, writing he had lost confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership and it would be dishonourable and unprincipled to remain as Health Secretary, as he heavily criticised his former boss. Where we need vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. Streeting stopped short on pulling the trigger on a leadership challenge right now, but he told Keir Starmer he would not be the one to lead Labour into the next general election. The Prime Minister steadfast, signalling he'd plough on, saying in a letter to Wes Streeting that Labour had made a promise to turn the page on the chaos that was roundly rejected by the British people at the last general election. But Starmer's landslide win now long past and his success long forgotten. Former Safeguarding Minister and Wes Streeting ally Jess Phillips for the first time talked about her decision to resign on Tuesday. You said Starmer's a good man, but you also, and you said that in your letter, but you also said he doesn't have the drive, the fight. You said, have a row, push back, make arguments, bring people along. Standing up and being counted can't always be workshopped. Politics is as much about feelings as policy, especially at the moment. What do you think he's just too robotic, he can't connect, he doesn't bring passion? What were you getting at there?
What I think that he lacks and his operation lacks is the drive to get anything done with the gusto that is needed in a time like it's like we run an analog government in a digital world.
What do you think of Andy?
There's a sort of level of entitlement that I feel like I'll just have X, Y, and Z seat. I don't know, I'm really rooted in the place where I represent, maybe. And so I always think that it doesn't look great playing a sort of Game of Thrones.
The throne soon materialising in the seat of Makerfield.
As your MP, I will put Makerfield at the heart of a UK government led by Keir Starmer.
With former Minister Josh Simons announcing early evening he was stepping down as the MP to let Andy Burnham run for Parliament. But the path to Westminster not clear-cut. It's understood the PM won't block Burnham's attempt to stand, but Reform just won big in the local elections in this part of the North West. As the news of Simons standing down broke, Cabinet loyalist Pat McFadden came out to bat for his boss. The Prime Minister has lost the support of nearly a quarter of the Parliamentary Labour Party. He's lost a Cabinet Minister. There's been 4 ministerial resignations. Whether for all the goodwill in the world and the best intentions he wants to continue as Prime Minister, can you hand on heart say that he can command the confidence of the Labour Party anymore? I mean, the writing's on the wall, isn't it?
It's been a dramatic week, but I think he can continue. He wants to continue, and he wants to do the job he was elected to do.
Is he going to stand at the next election as Prime Minister for Labour?
He's got every right to do that. He was elected on a 5-year mandate. It's 3 years away, but I believe he wants to continue.
Starmer may want to carry on, but he's fast running out of road. Too weak to block Burnham's run for Parliament. The Prime Minister's fate is now beyond his control. 2 leadership rivals have shown their hand, and Keir Starmer is now in the midst of a protracted and painful leadership crisis that could drag on for months. There are plenty of MPs who don't want the civil war Labour's now in, or their leader embroiled in the chaos he promised to end. This a government that promised change, now paralysed. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Well, as I said, John's with us on set. Could Sir Keir Starmer fight on and fight on to win? Those famous words.
It's looking increasingly less likely. Now, bring you bang up to date, there's been a survey done by the Parliamentary Committee. That's the committee of backbenchers that goes to meet the PM usually after Prime Minister's questions on a Wednesday. And the numbers of those Labour MPs who want Starmer to step down is now reached 230.
Wow.
They've done a ring round and the numbers are 230. Now, a couple of nights ago, I spoke to a government whip who said for all the 80 or so who had gone public, there was another 80 who privately wanted him to go. So that was about 160, 170. Now it's said to be 230 who want him to go. That's half the Parliamentary Labour Party. So, I mean, listening to Pat McFadden there, what a masterclass in how to avoid answering questions. Pure yes minister, wasn't it? Not a straight answer amongst them. But I think there's going to come a point, I think, when someone has to say to the Prime Minister, whether it's, I don't know, the Chief Whip or somebody, or the Deputy Prime Minister or a senior Cabinet Minister, or even Victoria Starmer, the game's up, you can't go on. I mean, reputedly, it was Dennis Thatcher who said to Maggie eventually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Old girl.
Yeah, old girl,
Old girl, the game's up. So,
but you do get the impression that he is going to fight to the bitter end and he's not going anywhere voluntarily.
At the moment.
Things have changed, though. I mean, I can remember talking to a couple of new Labour MPs, the people who came in the 2024 for the first time. And a year ago, both were incredibly dismissive of the trouble which there already was within the party and the dissatisfaction with Sir Keir Starmer. Having spoken to the two of them in the last, it's only two people, but having spoken to the two of them in the last, month or so, they are now know he has to go. And it's changed like that. And I don't think it's quite as simple as Labour MPs fearing for their seats, because they feared for their seats a year ago. I think a kind of Rubicon has been crossed, and he's dead meat, as they say.
Let's look at the Prime Minister's approval rating now. This is the figures that we have, and we can see that right at the bottom, Keir Starmer's on -46, Zoe.
I mean, it's always been a real puzzler with Keir Starmer, how he got so unpopular so quickly. I understood why my element of the Labour Party, as was, didn't like him, and that's because he spent a long time trying to purge the left of the party. I understood why the right didn't like him, because obviously they're the right. I understood why the centre-right didn't like him. I could kind of make a case for all these things until literally everybody hated him, and I thought, this has surpassed anything I can readily explain. And somebody pointed out that a similar thing happened to Jeremy Corbyn when he wasn't even in government. So there's obviously something people are responding to in the party itself.
No, I think it's I think it's more than that. I think it's something structural and horrible about our political system at the moment. That whoever ascends to a position of power is immediately reviled, pretty much immediately, and that was the case with.
But that actually isn't right, because
hang on a sec.
What pollsters always say, right, is that Keir has no flaw. There's nothing he can go below.
Just let me run through the figures. Every single Prime Minister since Tony Blair has had an approval rating lower than the one who preceded him. Every single one. And it grows and it grows and it grows. And it's very, very difficult, I think, for any politician, whether they be of the left or of the right, to continue to govern with the support of the people.
But you're
I think
kind of
it's
eschewing
incredibly
analysis
difficult
there and just saying everybody's more unpopular than the last one, therefore...
Well, they are.
Therefore, the electorate is the problem. I mean, that's just...
Well, no, I think the electorate... I think that there is a problem with the electorate. I think there's a problem with all of us. I think there's a problem with the way in which we view politics.
I think there's a problem with you.
But I think there's a problem with the way we view politics, and if you don't think that, I'm astonished, because it's clearly something which has happened across Europe, it's happened in America. It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right, you will end up being hated very, very quickly indeed. And the thing which, as you know, every political career ends in failure. Is a very, very famous quote. The truth is that it does, and fair enough, but that it ends up in failure very, very quickly these days, and that's a problem for the way in which our country is governed.
Well, shall we see if Andy Burnham is going to face
I was just going to quote, actually, so that poll you quoted, Gillian, is a YouGov poll today. So, yes, Starmer -46, largely unchanged from last month. But Wes Streeting, only 16% have a positive opinion of Streeting, 44 negative. Burnham is the most popular Labour figure amongst the public, net score of +4. The only figure a majority of 2024 Labour voters see positively. I mean, it's possibly because he's not in Parliament, he's not having to sort of take unpopular decisions and stuff, that he does well in the polls.
Yeah. And he's outside of that Westminster bubble and has done incredibly well in Greater Manchester. Shall we take a look at Sam Coates' report now on the situation with reform and the fact that they're chomping at the bit to take on Andy Burnham?
This new data shows why Andy Burnham could struggle to return to Westminster. Let me show you why. This map of last week's local election results shows Reform UK winning in every single of the wards in the Makerfield constituency. It is a Labour seat. Here are the results from the last general election, but the majority was only 5,399 votes. Reform already saying that they're going to win it, but if Andy Burnham takes it, he'll have proved his credentials as somebody who can take on Nigel Farage. But there's another problem for Labour. Have a look at this. Greater Manchester, from Tameside to Bury to Wigan, a Labour area for generations, but last Thursday it went Reform blue. These are the winning wards all across the 10 councils. But just how bad was it? We've done the calculations. And here they are. This is the percentage share of the vote in lots of wards in last Thursday's local election. Reform, 30% out in top. Labour on 24, Greens third on 20%, Tories on 10, Lib Dems on 9. But how does that compare to 2022 when a lot of the wards were last contested? Well, look at this. Labour down 28 percentage points. Reform up even more than that, up 30 percentage points, with the Greens up 12 as well. Tories down a bit, Lib Dems down a bit. There are still some strongholds for Labour. This is a map of constituencies with the areas darkest red showing where the Labour vote in last week's local elections was up to 50%. You can see the cluster around Manchester city centre, but it's still a very challenging picture for Labour if Andy Burnham heads to Westminster.
Well, Nigel Farage has already said we look forward to the contest and we will absolutely throw everything at it. That's his very latest quote. They are looking forward to the fight, John. But we've heard from Jess Phillips and she's spoken about entitlement. We've also heard from the Lib Dems, their Cabinet Office spokesperson Lisa Smart saying the arrogance of these men is staggering. To believe that representing a community is a gift to be handed to your mate shows utterly out-of-touch contempt.
Well, political opponents would say that, wouldn't they? So Labour last time were 5,399 ahead of Reform. Tories, Lib Dems, absolutely nowhere. It'd be a two-horse race. The Greens only polled 1,700 votes in that seat. But, of course, we've seen the Greens do quite well. Obviously, they won the Gorton by-election and reasonably well in Manchester, although I think it was Reform that did best, as Sam was saying, in the Greater Manchester area. I think it'll be a two-horse race between Labour and Reform there. I don't think the Greens will figure.
But Zoe, do you think it will be a shoe-in for Andy Burnham?
No, definitely not.
No. I think he'll... I do think, probably more than you two do, that I think it's very, very difficult for Reform to beat Andy Burnham in Manchester. And I think that because the anti-Farage vote is far, far bigger than the pro-Farage vote. And that's what we saw at Keffelly, it's what we saw at Gordon and Denton, it's what we see at by-elections around the country. If it's a by-election, I think Burnham wins, and probably with some ease. I think if it's a general election, you know, with everything else going on, I think far, far closer. I think if it was on the east coast of the north, it would be far more difficult for Burnham.
There's the other thing, and I totally get that the Lib Dems would say that, but that sense of entitled, whether Jess Phillips called him entitled, whether the Lib Dems think they're passing these jobs around between mates, even though I'm medium sure Josh Simons and Andy Burnham were never mates. I mean, different wings of the party and very different people. And also, Josh Simons was parachuted in, but that's another story.
He was.
The point is, people get cussed in by-elections. You know, you're in the petri dish. The whole of the media is looking at you and mansplaining your temperament to the rest of the country.
It's just explaining. That will do, yeah.
Explaining in a patronising way your temperament to the rest of the country.
Told off, so.
and you do kick against the pricks.
To quote from the Bible.
It's a quote from the Bible.
Yeah, let's listen a little bit more to Jess Phillips, expanding on that entitlement, speaking to Beth Rigby.
I have a huge amount of fondness for Andy Burnham, but I would also, but what I would also say is that, like, just be really, really careful of looking like it entitled. It looked like, you know, there's a sort of level of entitlement that I feel like I'll just have X, Y and Z seat. I don't know, I'm really rooted in the place where I represent, maybe. And so I always think that it doesn't look great playing a sort of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, you think the King of the North playing a Game of Thrones. I see what you did there. Did you mean to?
I sort of didn't mean to, but maybe subconsciously. He is Jon Snow, yeah. I don't think that Keir Starmer, like, you know, I think he's with me on the substantive, That's of no question whatsoever. He wants to end child abuse. Like, that is not in question at all. What I think that he lacks and his operation lacks is the drive to get anything done with the gusto that is needed in a time like it's like we run an analog government in a digital world.
John, in terms of Andy Burnham being bussed into an area that he knows nothing about, that's completely unfair, isn't it?
That is unfair, as I said earlier. I thought you were going to talk about... I mean, I often quote the fact that when he stood for the leadership twice before, 2010, 4th out of 5. That was when it was Ed Miliband, David Miliband, Ed Balls, Burnham and then Diane Abbott. And he stood in 2015, where he came runner-up to Jeremy Corbyn. But I always remember... I remember being at a hustings, I can't remember if it was a TUC conference or a Labour conference, when Andy Burnham said, no more parachuting special advisers into safe seats. And, of course, I recall there was an MP called Lawrence Cunliffe, who was a veteran Labour MP, former whip, who was MP for Lee, who suddenly retired at the last minute, and lo and behold, Andy Burnham, who was special advisor to Chris Smith, who was Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport in the first Blair term, was parachuted into Lee.
So hang on a sec, he was saying no more parachuting in when he was standing for leader, having been parachuted in, and he'd completely erased his own memory of that.
Obviously.
Wow.
He got very cross with me for saying it on Sky News.
Do as I say, not as I do.
They do have short memories. I mean, I still want to hear again the West Streeting clip of his New Year's resolution, which was 2 years ago, which was to say, to do everything I possibly can to ensure that Keir Starmer has a comfortable life as Prime Minister.
He once did karaoke at the Labour Party conference a couple of years back, and what is it, the Robbie Williams song, isn't it, Angels?
Yeah.
And, and he sang it to I'm Loving Starmer instead, instead of Loving Angels.
We should get that clip out, shouldn't we?
I'm not sure there were cameras there. It was probably about 3 in the morning.
It's absolutely painful.
Thank you all for the moment. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll hear more from the possible contenders for the top job. Stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Now, the King of the North, otherwise known as Andy Burnham, has made 2 previous bids to be Labour leader. We've dug this out of the archive.
I have a very clear vision of how I want to rebuild Labour for new times.
Labour wins when it speaks for everyone and for the whole country, for Middle England, but also for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland too. And it needs a leader whose voice can carry into all the nations and regions of the UK, be heard in every home, someone who people can relate to, who understands their lives. I am that person.
Do you believe him, Zoe?
Well, I didn't believe him then. I mean, he was quite a different creature. To be honest, in the 2010 leadership election, he didn't make much of an impact because all the story was the kind of Cain and Abel, Miliband against Miliband thing. And the funniest thing in that one was when they asked Miliband's mum who she was voting for, and she said, "I'm voting for Diane Abbott." But the 2015, he was very much associated with the old order. Him and Yvette Cooper were kind of continuity Blairites. Corbyn, of course, was Corbyn, and Corbyn, let's not forget, did win that election. And Liz there was that disaster. I don't want to dwell on it.
Liz Kendall only got
it
was
4.5%, and
she
a lot
was
of
my
us,
first choice.
A lot of us had WhatsApp groups called 4.5% for ages afterwards. Anyway, that just sounds mean. The point is that he was a different politician then. His views were different, and he's not just shedding his skin because it's convenient. He has been radicalised by a series of scandals. One was Hillsborough, one was the blood scandal, one was COVID and the Westminster's treatment of Manchester during that time, and the fact that his constituents were so hard hit by it. So I think he's a different person and a different politician, but it's nice to see the eyelashes back, you know.
That's a whole nother discussion, the eyelashes. Here's Angela Rayner denying that she has ambitions to lead.
I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country, and I've got a lot in my in tray to prove that I can do the job that I'm doing and deliver on the milestones for the people of this country. That's what I'm interested in, Trevor.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of.
Say the word never.
Never.
The word never was used there, but she is still a contender, although the way it's being reported now is that she'll perhaps throw her weight behind Andy Burnham. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's less likely now that she'll stand, now that it looks as though Andy Burnham may make it onto the ballot paper, and I think there's a good chance that if he does, she won't stand.
Yeah, I would think it's a little unfair. I'm no great fan of Angela Rayner, but accuse her of vaulting ambition. I'm not sure that's there. There is a certain honesty to her about her political ambitions, which perhaps escape her sometimes when dealing with her own financial circumstances, if I could put that in. But I don't think she'd stand a chance either. I think it would be very, very difficult for her. I think most of the Labour Party tonight is thinking, we're going to have Andy Burnham as the leader of this party. I think that's what they are thinking tonight.
It's looking that way. Just on Angela Rayner, in the interview she gave today, or at least that was broadcast today, television interview, she talked about being a team player and being part of the team. I think what she has wanted in recent months is to get back into the cabinet.
Yes.
Now, at one point today, I thought, oh, Secretary of State for Health, but I'm not sure it was offered. But no, I think that's what I sense that she probably. If Burnham stands, she'll probably back him and she'll perhaps hope for a decent job in a Burnham cabinet.
Yeah, exactly.
One more clip for you. Spot who is on the end when an array of MPs were once asked who'd be Prime Minister in 10 years' time.
Any old bloody Labour woman I'll take.
Undoubtedly Kemi Badenoch.
Gavin Williamson.
Amber, Morris.
Rees-Mogg. How about that?
I think it'd probably be me.
He was serious, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. I mean, his ambition...
Look like he's joking.
His ambition has been the worst kept secret in Westminster for years. He's made no secret of it. But I remember Tony Blair once said it's a noble ambition to want to lead your party. And I suppose there's nothing wrong. I mean, I've always taken the rather cynical view that every member of Parliament who gets elected wants to be Prime Minister one day. I mean, most of them will say, no, 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 certainly not. But he's never made any secret of his ambition.
Yeah, and I do think there's something kind of a bit ridiculous about those gotcha moments, because it's like, you've got what? Like, even if they've changed their mind, that doesn't make them less than human. It's just...
No, and probably going through his mind when he was asked that question was all the other people who it could possibly be, and he thought, Christ, I can't say any of those. And it's ended up with the only thing he could say, which was, it's going to be me. But I don't think it's a good look. You know? I just don't think it's a good look.
What, to admit that you'd like to be Prime Minister?
Well, not to admit that you'd like to be Prime Minister. I'd like to be Prime Minister, to be honest. Yeah, I'd give it a crack. I think to admit that you think it's going to be you, which is what he did, is very different, as if it were ineluctable. You know, it's not a good look.
But there are certain politicians who are absolutely driven by that ambition. I'm thinking of Michael Heseltine as one, Boris Johnson another one.
Boris
World King,
didn't want to be Prime Minister. He wanted to have been Prime Minister. He didn't want all the stuff which goes with being Prime Minister, you know, such as the work, I suspect.
Well, we were just hearing him being reminded that Heseltine mapped out his career to...
Yes, he did, yes.
Prime Minister.
With his ghastly new furniture.
Yes. That was from the Alan Clark Diaries.
Alan Clark Diaries.
And it was actually a quote that was attributed to Michael Joplin, the former Tory chief whip.
That figures as well.
And why did he get the nickname of Tarzan? Was it for the...
I think he just looked like...
When he picked up the mace. He picked up the mace and swung it around.
He loved that nickname. He didn't like Hezza, which is what I think papers like The Sun started to call him.
Yeah.
He liked Tarzan, though.
Should we take a look at the papers now? Reminisce there. The Eye leads on the Prime Minister's fight to retain control of the Labour Party. Burn to run is the Sun's headline. There it is, as the Prime Minister reveals he won't block Burnham from standing to be an MP. The Star also leads on Andy Burnham's plans to try and re-enter Westminster. The Telegraph suggests the Manchester Mayor could replace Starmer within weeks. But The Guardian points out that Mr Burnham will need to win the Makerfield by-election first. Labour's Great Pretenders is the headline in the Mail, where it says Starmer's government has been frozen in the headlights. Remarking on what could become a Labour leadership contest, the Mirror says, and so it begins. Where we need a vision, we have a vacuum, is the headline in the Express, as Wes Streeting resigns as Health Secretary. Those are his words. The Times also leads on the mounting pressure on the Prime Minister to set out a timetable for his departure. The Metro portrays the possible contenders as characters from the Jilly Cooper TV series Rivals. Let's get some people there. So let's start with... should we start with The Guardian, your paper? Zoe, Burnham's in, but now he needs to win a by-election. I mean, how difficult is that a hurdle for him? Some saying that it's a shoo-in, he'll win easily. Others saying that he shouldn't underestimate the power of reform.
So in his favour, you have the fact that all eyes are on it. There's a huge amount of anti-reform sentiment in the area, as much as reform is very strong. He is obviously the candidate around which most progressive people will find it easiest to rally. So there was no way they were going to rally around the Labour candidate in Gorton and Denton once it wasn't Andy Burnham. But, you know, plenty of Greens would have no problem. That's on the plus side. And plus the fact, you know, it's the kind of headline. You kind of get pulled in by the narrative arc. He desperately needed a seat. It was like the last lifeboat off the Titanic. He could pull the sword out of the stone. It's like all this kind of myth-making around him only needing this one thing in order to be the perfect challenger. You do get caught up in that as a voter, and you don't want to ruin it, unless you do want to ruin it. So there is a kind of counter-suggestibility to electorates in by-elections. There's a kind of cussedness. There's a, I don't want to vote just because John Curtis is predicting that I am going to vote that way. I don't want to do this thing that makes your Westminster narrative. And when you couple that with the fact that Labour is so unpopular, so many people canvassing have described that, you know, door knockers aren't even starting the conversation. They knock on the door. Whoever is prepared to talk to them lets rip about how much they hate the government. So it's possible that he gets contaminated.
Or hates Starmer.
Yeah, or hates Starmer. But it's possible that he does get some Labour contamination from that.
Rod, do you think that we might see the protest vote employed in this constituency in Makerfield? That they might, their best judgment, want Andy Burnham, but they are protesting against Keir Starmer?
In a way, Andy Burnham is a protest vote. Because it's against what Labour is standing for at the moment, is what they would say. I cannot see anything other than and maybe I'm wrong, and if so, I apologise from the bottom of my heart to Nigel Farage and his party, but I cannot see anything other than a Labour victory, and probably a reasonably comfortable one, because as Zoe has mentioned, and I've mentioned before, the anti-Farage vote, the anti-reform vote, is just numerically much bigger than the reform vote. Less so perhaps in Makerfield than in Gorton and Denton. Less so, about the same as Caerphilly, I would have thought. Round about the same there.
I think you're just saying this certainty to hex him.
Let's lighten the mood a bit, because the Metro's taken on the same story, but the Metro's taken a funnier line with the headline there, Rivals, drawing on Gilly Cooper's infamous novel.
You
Yes.
know what's interesting, I think, is that it's very rare for it to come down to this. Normally, by the time they're in public, in a rivalry, everything's already been stitched up behind the scenes anyway. So to get actually a situation where it's Wes who resigned, where 2 days ago it looked like Wes was going to come in through the middle, and he was never going to get a seat, Andrew was going to stand, Wes was going to stand against her, and he stood a good chance. That was only 48 hours ago. And now it looks like Wes has basically walked out of his post and not got the numbers, and all Wes has done is galvanise Josh Simons to give up his seat for Andy Burnham. So instead of actually having that rivalry, he's created the conditions for his rival to win. And this is finally a plot in Westminster that Gilly Cooper would have been proud to write. You know, weird things are happening. Yeah. It's not just a ball rolling down a hill.
Well, Wes Streeting, in his resignation letter, invited his rival in, didn't he? Because he opened the way for Andy Burnham to some extent. Let's have a look at the Matt cartoon. That's the Telegraph. Call this chaos. These are presumably 2 MPs in the House of Commons. The Tories would have had 3 new leaders by now. Boom.
Which is actually not that funny, but true. I mean, it's not up to Matt's usual humour standard, but it's absolutely true that the Conservatives are never happier than when they're plotting against their own leader, whereas Labour finds it far more difficult to do so, and there's always a huge reluctance to pull the trigger. Whereas the Conservative Party, you know, as soon as the government gets into office, there's a stalking horse, mincing around the ring. Crispin Blunt, do you remember him?
Yes.
From a long time ago.
So, Matt, not so funny, but completely true.
Completely true,
It was mean. That's like the first time we've done a Matt cartoon for so long, and it's the one time he's not funny.
Yes, he's the funniest cartoonist in the country.
He
of course,
is.
yeah.
But tonight he speaks the truth. Coming up next, we'll take a look at more stories in tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
We are on air now, just to warn you both.
Are we?
Yes. Yes, we didn't ring a bell, so I'll just tell you. So let's have a look at the Times and this story regarding Zach Polanski. He admits that he didn't vote in the election.
This is
an election. Why?
I mean, it's an extraordinary story. Basically, he made quite a lot of fanfare about the fact that he was supporting the Hackney mayor, and he said she was going to get his vote. And this was Zoe Garbett, who did indeed win. And that was May the 3rd, and then somebody asked him if he had voted, and he said he'd postal voted. And it appears that postal votes is quite easy to check if somebody applied for a postal vote, and he turned out not to have done so. Now he's admitted that he didn't. And I think the problem is that now he's saying he couldn't because of concerns for his security, but actually there are no concerns for your security applying for a postal vote.
Concerns for his sanity. I don't know about his security.
So I don't think it's brilliant, but I'm not prepared to hang, draw and quarter him.
You're not prepared to what?
Hang, draw and quarter him.
Just the first one will do. He is the worst kind of charlatan in that he's a dim-witted charlatan. He keeps making mistakes like this. Or not mistakes. He presumably just is expressing his own personality when he claims to have worked for the Red Cross, which the Red Cross then immediately say, no, you didn't, mate.
Why? What was the Red Cross claim? What did he say he'd done?
He said he'd represented the Red Cross, that he was a Red Cross representative, and the Red Cross said, hang on a minute, you did the same thing with one of the vote campaigns as well. I'm a representative of this. And he bigs himself up. These are always about things which could be immediately challenged. And then, of course, there's the not voting. There's the idiotic comments about the police. And you can see on the graph his popularity absolutely falling off a cliff.
But with the Red Cross, he wasn't actually employed by them, but he did have some representation for them.
Well, not according to the Red Cross. He did something for them, but he wasn't a representative of the Red Cross. I mean, it was just that bigging up stuff, which I know a lot of...
I think this is pedantry. I mean, look, OK, mate, I'll save this point for our next story. I just had a look at the list.
Oh, OK, all right. So we're going to go to the I. Farage bought 1.4 million property in cash after £5 million reward from tycoon.
Well, so this is what we're up against. We're up against very serious corruption in public life. It is weird. It is weird.
Why is it corrupt?
It's weird for a man who is in no way in politics to be given £5 million and then suddenly he is in politics and then suddenly he's very much in favour of cryptocurrency.
Except he spent the money on himself. You know.
Yeah, that's what corruption is, Rog.
Well, no, someone gave him money and he...
Yeah,
right, well, but you can't have it both ways. You can't argue... Hang on. You can't have it both ways. You can't argue that this money somehow found its way into Reform UK's coffers and that, therefore, that is corrupt because, as cryptocurrency...
No, that's not what I'm arguing. You can't misrepresent my argument and then tell me that I can't argue it. That is not what I'm arguing. I'm saying that the same crypto billionaire gave £17 million to Reform as well, so that's a dead duck. And giving a man £5 million who says he's not running, doesn't want to be the leader of Reform, and then he suddenly does want to be the leader of Reform. These are really, really serious things going on.
I'm not sure that they are. I'm not sure that they are. They're not.
Just on that, though, Rod, he is being investigated.
He's being investigated. Well, let's find out. Let's see what happens when he's been investigated.
How can you possibly be sitting there and saying, "Oh, Zach Polanski's really going off a cliff now because of that time he said he was a Green Cross representative when really he'd just done a thing for the Red Cross, not Green Cross, a Red Cross representative."
House crossing the road.
These are like they're kind of small things, and I don't know the truth of them or not the truth of them. But then you've got this gigantic.
You don't know the truth of this one either.
I do know that the money that's poured into Reform, it absolutely dwarfs single donor donations to any other political party, and I do know that terrifies the life out of me. And it's a big deal, unlike whether or not you postal vote.
But just to end on this, that there is an investigation now into where that cash came from and the amounts, etc. So it is being properly investigated.
It is, yes.
Suggests there might be some wrongdoing.